So now we got to talk about worksets. Worksets are collections of elements in your Revit collaborative file, which are just organized like layers. So I'm going to open up a project here that is already a collaborative file, and remember, we're not double-clicking on the projects in our file browser or finding them in our downloads folder or whatever. We're always opening Revit first, going to the models little panel here and hitting open. Once we navigate to that project, we can see that it's going to create a new local. I'm going to hit open here. It's going to prompt me to do one of two things, either overwrite the existing copy or append the timestamp. This isn't the central file. This is asking me, what do I do with the local copy? Because I already have a file that's named this, right? Because I've worked on this collaborative file in the past. I think for this class, it's fine to just overwrite the existing copy. But you might want to try one of two things. Just keep in mind which one you're doing, because there will be a timestamp that will be added to this. And now you can see my name has been added, or my Autodesk ID has been added to this file. So this is your collaborative file name, and this is your Autodesk ID. So you'll each have sort of an individual version of your file. That also helps if you want to keep all of your stuff in the cloud. You don't want anything on your local copy or on your hard drive in case you're running out of room. I'm going to go ahead and overwrite this existing copy here. And I'm prompted to specify which worksets I want to open. So if you followed the last tutorial, I showed you how to turn this option on where we could specify what we wanted to open and close whenever we open this collaborative file. And what this means is there's a little pane here on, a little column on the end of the prompt that says opened. And so let's say I was working on the architecture. Maybe I didn't want to load the mechanical and the site because it was sort of bogging my file down. I can hit close on these and we can reopen them later. Just keep that in mind. But this might be a way to go when you're sort of in the middle of the project, maybe not at the start of the project, but if you know you just want to work on your architecture and you just have to get through stuff quickly, the site might bog it down for some reason on your computer. I'm just going to open these all and we'll see what prompts here, and then we'll go over worksets. So let's run through a few key concepts for worksets. If I go to the Collaborate tab once I'm in this project, you can see what's called the active workset. So that's architecture. It says non-editable depending on if there's an owner or not, or if you're the owner or not. You can also see that prompt is down here on the status bar as well. So if I click Worksets, it's the same sort of prompt if I go to Collaborate and Worksets. So these are the same thing. Now when I click that prompt, I have a few options. I can change the active workset. So if I'm the mechanical engineer, I want to probably change it to mechanical and hit OK. You can see up here this changes to mechanical. And now when I draw things, there's going to be in mechanical. So let me just go ahead and draw let's just do some ducts here. If I select these here, you can see that on the properties of the element it says workset mechanical, and it was edited by me. Now later when we synchronize and we relinquish all our ownership, this will not say edited by anybody, but if there are new elements, you'll see that they will pop up that they were edited by me. I can change worksets over here on the properties as well. By just going to Identity Data Workset and change this to Architecture. So if you were working on the wrong workset, or if you're maybe helping somebody out where you're doing some mechanical work at the ground floor and they're doing some of the top floor, then you can sort of place some elements on the same workset, or you can change them later. For now, I'm going to go back to Collaborate and change this to Architecture. If I hit Gray in active worksets, you can see that everything that is not part of that workset is grayed out into halftone. So again, if I place a wall architectural, you can see that at least in a hidden line mode, this appears as full black outlines, and these are half-toned. So that might be a good explanation of, like, a visual explanation of how worksets work. That there are inactive and active worksets, and you're working in an active workset. You can change things within worksets fairly easily, but just know that they work very much like layers. If I select one of these items, you can see that it's on the workset, it's edited by me, and if I go to Collaborate Worksets, let's talk about editability and ownership. Editability doesn't mean that you can't edit these elements. You can see I've been moving them around, I've been adding things in, and that architecture is sort of the active workset. It's editable, right? Editable really means that there's an owner attached to it. So let's say I make the architecture workset an editable workset. Now you can see that my name pops up as an owner, and what that does is that means that I essentially have control over all of the changes that are made within that workset, at least while I'm working on it. So I'm going to hit OK here, and now if I go to Worksets here, there's no difference in the modeling process. What will happen is if you are an owner and this is editable, and this is a totally valid way of sort of divvying up the work within your group, you can just, every time you open a local file, just make the workset that you want editable, and that's how you can sort of control restrict access to the things that you don't want your group members to change. But say I'm the mechanical engineer and the architect is working on theirs and they own that. Well, if I want to move this wall to place a duct or something, then I'm going to have to ask them for permission. So they will see a prompt that pops up, and it's what's called an editing request. And this is fine. You can say that the architect will just always make this editable, then they're always the owner. The mechanical engineer makes their workset editable, and the structural and so on. I find that sometimes when the project gets a little bit more complex and maybe you accidentally move something, those editing requests will be a little bit tedious to wait for. They'll be a little bit tedious to sort of go through. The scale of the project is probably fine, and this is a totally valid way of collaborating. I suggest, by the way, just spending a day going through this, like maybe a couple hours with your group, getting this all set up. Somebody's going to have to set up the collaborative file. And just see, how fast your machine runs with all of the worksets open, none of the worksets open, and then see how fast the synchronization process works, which we'll go over in a second. But you don't have to claim ownership over these things. So if I hit no, I become the borrower of these elements. To explain the concept of borrowing, if I select an element that's on a different workset than I own, or I don't own this workset, or nobody owns this workset, you see this is on a workset site, and it's the sort of the lot here. This little thing pops up, and it says make element editable. So that's totally fine. If I click that, or if I just make a modification, if I go to Collaborate now, and I go to Worksets, you can see that I'm actually a borrower of things on the site. So I'm just taking elements on a workset that nobody really owns, and I'm borrowing them for the time being. I'm using that workset to sort of add or manipulate geometry. So you might be borrowing from multiple worksets, and that's totally fine. You might actually have multiple names here, right? If you are the owner of a workset and you see your name pop up there, your Autodesk ID, there can also be multiple borrowers, so you'll get multiple editing requests from your group members. But if nobody owns anything, you'll just see all of your different names in the borrower tab here. So how do we go ahead and save this stuff? So if I just do Control S, that's not going to sync with my group members. I'm not going to see changes come from the cloud. What that will do is it saves over the local copy, right? So in the case that my computer crashes or I want to go back to an earlier version, I can do that. But to be able to share this work with other group members, I need to go to the Collaborate tab, and I need to go to the Synchronize with Central button. I would always recommend going to the Synchronize and Modify settings, because whenever you're creating new worksets, you'll see this user created workset check mark will pop up. And so I want to check that. And it's prompting me for a couple things. One, I can compact the central model, which takes some time, but if you are having really large files on your Z drive and it takes forever to open, that might be the way to go. You don't have to check that by default. That might be something that we do later in the semester. And don't change the work the model location, because this will always be the same file. So you don't really ever need to change that. But it's also telling me after synchronizing, I want to relinquish the following work sets and elements, right? So I was borrowing this, and I want to give that up for everybody to be able to use. So because I did borrow elements, it can check that. And if I did create a work set, I can check that. If I created other things, I can check those as well. I can also create comments. So like, you can say to your group member, like, I finished ducting on floor 1. And then if we go to what's called a Worksharing monitor, we can see those comments. The last prompt it will ask us for is, do we want to save this logo before and after synchronizing? I would say yes, unless you're like really handy with the Control S and you just save all the time. What this will do is whenever you sync, sometimes you'll run into errors where people are syncing at the same time. Always talk to your group members when you're syncing as well. You don't necessarily want to sync at the same time because sometimes there will be sort of doubled up changes and it will queue. So, just message them or sort of create a timetable for you guys. So, every couple hours that you're syncing, but you don't sync at the exact same time. But what this will do is it will save it before and after synchronizing. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK here, and you're going to see the cursor change a couple times. One was it just saved it, and then it synchronized it. So now if I go to Worksets, I'm not a borrower anymore of any of these elements. That's because I relinquished all of my ownership. And even if I hit sort of some of these elements, even though I drew them, you can see now it says make element editable because it wasn't, it wasn't edited in that session before the synchronization. So I'm going to go ahead and move some of these things. And now you can see when I click that, it says edited by me. It's still in the architecture workset. This one is not edited by anybody. And if I go to Worksets, you can see that I am a borrower of the architecture workset. If you want to see changes that your group members have made, you also have to reload the latest central model. So if I hit reload latest, there's no changes here because I'm not working with any group members on this project. But just keep in mind that there's multiple sort of filters that you have to go through. So saving just saves the actual file to your local computer. Synchronizing puts all of your elements back in the cloud and it relinquishes all of your ownership. You can also relinquish all mine if you want to sort of undo the changes, or if you want to just release ownership of borrowed elements that you haven't changed. So you can, claim, editing status, and then you can relinquish all yours. And then you can reload the latest. So reloading the latest will just, you'll be able to see the changes that your group members have made while you're in this modeling session. So that's essentially it for Worksets. It's a little bit confusing at first, but once you get your head around it, and again, I really recommend just spending a day not really doing exactly what you need to do, but just like placing elements and seeing how it pops up. There is also this Worksharing monitor, which it does take a second to pop up. But you can use this to your benefit as well. So this is newer in the newer versions of Worksharing, and it tells you a few things. It tells you when your last sync was. It tells you who's actually working on this file, and if you do own Worksets, it shows you your editing requests. Also, if you make things like comments, it'll show you those notifications from who changed what. You can also check your system performance here. So if something's like really laggy, you might want to figure out like is it just because it's like my internet connection, or is it actually because my system performance? And that will allow you to navigate. Do I turn this workset on every time I model or not? So yeah, this just says that I'm this person and I'm working in a local file, and you can see essentially who's working together, and the last sort of if they're syncing, right? Because you don't want to sync at the same time. So Worksets theoretically work very much like layers. Just keep that in mind. There is an active workset that you're always modeling in, and you have to make a decision as to whether you want to own them or you want to just borrow from them. You can also gray or not gray inactive worksets. And every time you want to sync, go ahead and go to Synchronize with Central, Synchronize and Modify Settings, sync with the cloud, and then you can also load the latest. And then if you didn't select that save, always just save your local file, and then you're essentially done working in the collaborative file.